And we're back now with a panel. Before we get to the larger issue of race in America, I just want to note that the Justice Department cleared Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson of any wrongdoing in the shooting death of Michael Brown, just as the Missouri grand jury did, George, after 7 months of investigations and protests. It turns out that hands up, don't shoot apparently never happened.
No, but it was convenient because it was congruent with a liberal interpretation of things. And it's the third time we've seen this. It began, in a sense, with the Duke lacrosse case. Another hoax, the rape never happened, but it fed the narrative that male athletes particularly are testosterone-crazed menaces to society. Then came the Rolling Stone University of Virginia rape hoax. Again, fraternities are pools of testosterone and dangerous, and it all fits so conveniently. Then we get to Ferguson. And Ferguson, the don't shoot, fed the narrative about how the police are inherently dangerous to minorities. What the report demonstrates, by the way, is not, it seems to me, bias, but disparate impact, which is a different kettle of fish.
And we're going to...
And I think you also see diminishment of moral clarity on the part of black leadership in this country when they won't pay attention to some of the issues with regard to family breakdown, crime, bad schools, instead always pointing, again, to the white community as if white guilt is going to carry you to the next plateau. Just not realistic. So we've lost moral clarity in terms of dealing with slavery, Reconstruction, the fight against legal segregation in this country.
Well, it seems to me part of what you're saying is, as hard as that was and as brave as those people were, that was kind of easy, pardon the expression, black and white, and now it gets really complicated.
Correct.
Well, I mean, it's like George said about the narrative. One of the unfortunate things about the speech the president gave at Selma, and most of it was great. He actually made really good points. It was very rousing. But, you know, he just felt compelled in the end. He had to throw in this argument that there's still a big problem because of voter ID laws across the country. And that feeds another one of these narratives, which is just simply not true. It's not a central focus. If you look at 2012, black voter turnout exceeded that of white voter turnout, and in states with the strictest voter ID laws.
But that's because they had to overcome hurdles. I mean, I think what's surprising about this debate is we haven't talked at all about the other Ferguson report. I mean, you talk about moral clarity. There's moral clarity in the Ferguson report when they describe instances in which African Americans
Let me interrupt for a second, because I'm going to we have some statistics up on the screen. And this is the report about the general police department there in Ferguson. Please put it up on the screen. Blacks made up 67% of the population in Ferguson, but they accounted for 93% of the arrests there and 88% of cases where there was a use of force.
Exactly. There's disparate impact, but you have instance after instance of police officers with outright racist attitudes policing African Americans disproportionately versus the white population. They have racist emails, they have racist language, and that's why people distrusted perhaps the police. So I agree that some issues are ones that are more difficult, but these are issues in which we should actually speak with one more united voice. I think the issues out of Ferguson last week, it was good that we have a Justice Department that cleared the police officer. We can have trust in that. But you understand why people were protesting, because they didn't have faith in their police, because the police department basically
the specific narrative about Darren Wilson was not true.
Okay, there was a specific narrative that wasn't true, and it was good that we have a Justice Department we can trust. But why people were distrustful was because we've now learned that they have a police department that targets African Americans. And I would hope that all of us would see in Selma 50 years later that there are still challenges we face as a country. And I thought that's what was so important about the president's remarks, was to say, you know, these are things that we still have to tackle, and I hope we all do.
Less than a minute.
I mean, are we going to trust the Justice Department? Again, Eric Holder came out and said, we're not going to stop until we fix these things here. And
yes, we should not stop till we fix these things.
But does anyone actually think that the Justice Department is best positioned to be doing that?
As opposed to what? Ferguson itself, in which there are police that are actually, clearly they're not self-policing because they've had racist police officers for a long time doing these things, and no one has cared.
No,
Isn't that why we have a Justice Department? Because we have these laws that aren't being enforced at the local level?
I mean, I think that report was actually incredibly complicated. It got into things like productivity quotas and things too. It was tough.
To be continued.